Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Artform webinar series on AI. My name is Joe Ennis, and today we are talking about AI and impactful data. And I have Royce Harada joining me. Royce, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining me.
Thanks so much, Joe.
Yeah, so as we delve into this session today, expect to gain some valuable perspective on how AI can be leveraged to elevate the standard of marketing reports. You will learn how to craft reports that don't just present data, but also tell a story. And this story needs to be compelling, convincing, and crucial for executive strategy. And I'm very excited to have Royce on today. Royce is the director of digital marketing for Artform and just a complete expert in this area. And I myself am excited to learn a little bit about this. So Royce, why don't you talk to us, just open it up a little bit, kind of define our goals and what we're looking to do with the webinar today, as well as, just with AI and, recording and data in general.
Sure. So first and foremost, the most important part of any campaign, content creation or such, and especially reporting, is defining the goals. So you want to make sure that you have all of this information, all of these written out beforehand. We're going to break this up into three parts. First, we have the KPIs, the key performance indicators. I'm sure many of you have heard of this. And these are just kind of our overarching indicators of progress, or what really is that overarching goal. How are we measuring the success? Then we'll get a little bit deeper, which are those measures or quantifiable insights. And that kind of goes hand in hand with, all right, that little step deeper, how are we measuring things? And then finally, we'll go down to that metric level, which is those values. You'll see those, I'm sure you've seen a million reports, tons of numbers, but that's what makes up the measures, which then makes up the KPIs. So this is why it's such a foundational step.
Awesome. Excited to get into it. So why don't you start us off here a little bit with, I guess you kind of just did start us off, but the interplay of KPIs and metrics. KPIs and metrics kind of, interweave a little bit. They kind of overlap a bit. Can you explain a little bit about what we're looking at here on this slide, as well as a little bit of that idea?
Sure. So key performance indicators, as I said in the previous slide, this is kind of that overarching. I would describe it as how you would go to your executive or to someone in charge of your campaign and just say, this is how I measure success, without getting into the nitty gritty or the granular metrics or measures. And then on the other side, you'll have those metrics and measures, which is that more quantifiable, very data-driven approach. And the key interplay here is that those metrics are what's going to help you optimize your campaigns. It's going to help you create those data-driven strategies and another way to say it is strategic decision making in order to meet those goals. So that's why it's so important to align your operational data, as you see in this diagram, and the connector in between.
Royce, can you define metrics based on the distribution method a little bit? Like, what kind of metrics apply to what different types of distribution?
Sure, absolutely. So just as important as it is to have your KPIs, I'd say that the second most important part, if not actually the most important part, is to make sure that it aligns with your channels of distribution. For example, you'll see that, every distribution channel, whether it be advertising, marketing, organic, they all have their different metrics that typically lead to measurements of success. So for example, if you release something through an email blast, the metrics that you're going to want to take a look at are number of recipients, the open rate, what is the bounce rates, response rate. And as opposed to website metrics, this is going to be starkly different, where you're going to look at engagement rates on your web page, how long people are lingering around, are people downloading resources, and if so, how many are downloading these resources. So as you'll see, whenever you do distribute your content, you want to make sure that it is as relevant as possible.
Are there any specific that you have found work better for, like, let's say website metrics in general? There's a lot here. Are there any specific that you point to as like, these are good ones to pay attention to?
Yeah, it is pretty dependent, I'd say, on just their overarching goal. However, just working with clients in the past and even our own website, the number one indicator that I like to follow is engagement rate, because for the most part, this is a percentage that shows not only how many people are on your website or on your web page, but how many people are actually engaging with your web pages. So that includes, clicking links, actually scrolling through, downloading resources, even filling out forms. So I would say engagement rate is one of the top tier metrics that you want to pay attention to.
So as we, continue, there's a lot of different types of data that you could, collect, even as we saw from that last slide. Um, how do you choose the right type of data for the type of marketing report that you're making? And what are, as we see on the slide, what are some of those data points?
Sure, that's a really good question. A lot of these here that we have on this slide are really pertinent, and for the most part, all of these should be included. And I'll quickly go through some of them. So, relevant KPIs and metrics. So, as we said, this is one of the most important parts. So, we're gonna want this in our reports. This is what indicates the success of our campaigns, and this also kind of gives us some data to back up the reason we made some decisions throughout the campaign, whether that be reallocating budget, or even downright pausing certain variations for A/B testing purposes. This kind of gives us the why behind the what we did. Also, customer insights. So this is a little bit different, but for the most part, these are just that demographic and behavioral and psychographic insights that we can glean from our reporting and from our data. So this can include age range, or where certain people are in the country or around the world, because this will help us tailor our messaging for future campaigns or even the same campaign down the line. We have campaign performance data, so I'm not going to really get into the nitty gritty of this, but once again, I think that this just goes a little deeper into the measures and the metrics. One thing is competitive analysis, and this kind of goes hand in hand with historical data down the line or down this list. A lot of people want to see how your data and how your metrics stack up against competitors. And a lot of people ask me, well, is it better than my competitor? And that's how a lot of people, especially at the exec level, they see success. And so this is why it is always important to do some competitor research before, during, and after reporting. Financial metrics, I'd say, is another important one, just because a lot of people, a lot of CEOs, they want to look at that bottom line. They want to look at how much money was made through this paid effort, through this organic effort. And so for the most part, you are going to see these components. Channel specific data, a lot of times different stakeholders, they want to be able to see which channels led to the best return on investment, or best return on ad spend. That way they know what they can allocate money towards in the future. And this is the best way to do that, is really to look at a breakdown by channel. And then finally, we have qualitative research. This one is going to be a lot more dependent on whether you can receive this qualitative research. But if you can, it is always great to kind of go to your market, talk to your actual target audience, and see how they interacted, how they felt, and how they just really perceived the ads or marketing collateral out there. And this will really help to inform future marketing and advertising efforts.
Cool. Any tips for listeners or viewers who are trying to, put together a report and trying to figure out which ones they should grab? Obviously here listed we have, different reasons for different ones, but is there any rule of thumb or anything that you stick to when making sure that you're grabbing the right ones and knowing that, the ones that you're choosing and the data that you're choosing is right for that report?
Yeah, I feel like the main part here is you want those relevant KPIs and metrics front and center, and anything else around that, I think that it needs to be complementary to that. Because if you have a huge, robust report with a ton of numbers, but it doesn't answer any of these questions or doesn't answer to the KPI, they're just a bunch of vanity metrics, and it's just really you're going to see people glazing over those reports. So start at the top with those relevant KPIs and build around that. And you'll know.
Awesome. Let's keep going. So making sure that, the data that you grab is quality and clean is very, very important because, if you're giving a client or a customer, data, they want to make sure that it's correct and that it's good data. They want to know where you got it. And, um, there's some things that go into that. So we have a couple listed here. Do you want to kind of walk us through why this is important and the kind of points we have on the slide here?
Yeah, absolutely. So, super important, just making sure that everything is as accurate as possible. And we'll dive into a few of these. So first, importance of data quality. So let's understand why data quality is non-negotiable. Inaccurate or incomplete data can really lead to misguided strategies, wasted resources, and just poor business decisions at the end of the day. So high quality data, on the other hand, just really ensures that the insights you derive are reliable and your strategies are built on a solid foundation. Next up, we have common data quality issues. So common issues plaguing data include inaccuracies, duplications, outdated information, and just overall inconsistencies. There's nothing worse than inconsistencies within a report that just completely throws out the validity of it. So these can stem from various sources such as manual data entry errors, outdated CRM systems, or just disjointed data collection methods. So you really want to keep an eye on those. There's data cleaning practices. So to tackle these issues, robust data cleaning practices are essential. This involves regularly updating your databases, implementing checks to identify and eliminate duplicate entries, standardizing data entry processes to minimize inconsistencies, and even using data validation rules to prevent errors during your data collection. And then also we have our maintaining data integrity as just a great way to do this. Establish clear data governance policies, train your team on the importance of data accuracy and consistent data handling procedures. So you really want to make sure that you have an SOP around this and that everyone is aware of that and really just caught up on it. We want that to be muscle memory and just using automation where possible to reduce human error. That happens so often. It's really no one's fault, human error, but there are ways to set up those parameters to prevent it. And then finally, we have conducting regular data audits, which is really crucial. So basically assessing the accuracy and completeness of your data. This is just quintessential to your audits. And identifying areas where data quality can be improved. So just really staying proactive in your reporting.
Awesome. And I think we can, I don't think we can stress enough the importance of quality and clean data.
Exactly.
No one wants to deliver, data to a client and then due to, just not knowing how to get it correctly, figuring out that you gave a client incorrect information or having them figure out that you gave them incorrect information. So, making sure you have clean and quality data is extremely
exactly. And you know what, Joe, even to that point, if you do see like a bunch of inconsistencies or things that are just not stacking up, what that's also going to do is take into scrutiny all of your previous reports that you've provided, because all of a sudden now you're in a rut where you need to go back and make sure that the data was clean for, it could be a few or it could be many reports. And then all of a sudden that's just such a waste of resources and time when you could have made sure that you're doing this quality and correctly in the beginning.
Yeah. So make sure you're doing it right from the
Yep.
start. So, in the journey of data driven marketing, the ultimate destination is to arrive at actionable insights that inform strategic decision making. So, let's explore how we transform raw data into valuable nuggets of wisdom that drive business growth. Royce, what makes an insight actionable?
Sure. So an actionable insight is not just a data point. It's a data-driven, really revelation that clearly indicates a course of action. And it answers not just the what, but also the why and how of a situation. So, for instance, an insight might reveal that customers from a particular demographic are more likely to purchase a product after watching an instructional video or demo. So, this insight can directly lead to a decision to invest more in video content for that demographic than, say, other channels. And that really just takes out that guesswork. So, like I said in previous slides here, there, as long as you have a why behind the decisions you're making, it'll be easier to justify. And the best way to do that is through data and through reporting.
So, now we're going to move into the importance of benchmarks in your report. Royce, why are benchmarks important?
So they're important because, and let me even back up there. So sometimes I will be presented a report, or I'll present a report to Janet, our CEO, and she'll say, okay, great, but are these results good? And, there are so many ways to answer that question, but I think that the best and the most reliable way to do so is through benchmarking. So why is it important? So it's important because you get to actually have that quantifiable data to compare something to. And for the most part, you're going to it's going to be the easiest for you to identify or to compare your success now to your own success in the past. Because, although we can do some industry research, we can do all types of research across, different companies or competitors, you're your own unique company and you have your own unique business models. So it's crucial to take a look at your past performance and compare it against your current performance or even future performance.
As we continue through, reporting, interactive data visualization and making data accessible and engaging. So this is something that sometimes people don't really think about as much. A lot of people can be so focused on the report that they don't actually make it accessible for people who might not actually understand what's going on or what they're looking at, or engaging enough that they stay in it and don't just get lost in numbers. Can you explain a little bit why that's important, and maybe a tip or two on how you try to make sure that we're doing this for our own clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the end of the day, like you said, data visualization is more than just turning numbers into charts and graphs. There's kind of an art to it. You have to be able to tell a story with your data and make these really complex and sometimes intimidating data sets into something comprehensive and something that makes the reader just completely understand what they're seeing, why they're seeing it, and want to see more and get excited about the numbers that they're seeing. Interactive visualization takes this a step further. And what this does is it allows users to engage with the data on their own terms and to explore and manipulate the reports. So when I say manipulate the reports, I mean specifically some of the data sets, even the date ranges. And this will just really give them full range to explore how certain campaigns are going, be able to see benchmarks in real time, create their own benchmarks, and then just really see how things are performing in their own time frames or under the certain dimensions or metrics that are most important to them. All right, now we have a few examples here. So let's take a look at a couple of hypothetical reports. So first, we have a Google Search Console report. This is created to assess a website's organic traffic. Now, if this was presented to an executive level, we could easily see certain certain data sets such as the landing page. So for example, we can see that a lot of people are accessing the first landing page there, the Google merchandise, pretend like that's, all different, more comprehensive web pages. But we would say, hey, let's allocate more of our time, let's allocate more of our resources to optimizing this page because it is getting a lot of search traffic. It's getting a lot of organic traffic. So let's make sure that since people are landing here, we'll make it as valuable as possible. And then moving on then, so same here, Google ad report. We do a lot of advertising here at Artform. And one thing that is really, really important to us and to the clients is being able to show our expertise in A/B testing and variant testing. And so one way that we do this here, and you'll see in this hypothetical report, top campaigns, imagine these campaigns were broken out, but were part of, the same overarching campaign. We're just really comparing them. We want to see which one is performing the best, which one is just really garnering the most engagement. And then we can see up here, hey, they're all performing pretty equally in terms of engagement. So something is resonating really well with our audience. And then what we can then do is begin to pivot, and then we can begin to A/B test different aspects of the campaign and then go from there. But the main point here is that we can see a snapshot in real time and include this in our report and say, this is why we decided to change up our campaigns because of this historical data, because of this variant testing. And then up here as well, so we just thought that this was a little fun because you'll see that now with a lot of streaming services, I just actually had this happen to me the other night. We were watching something on, I believe it was Peacock, and I just hit pause, and all of a sudden I was stunned to see just every time I pressed pause, there were new adverts, just CTV adverts popping up with QR codes. And I thought this is just really interesting, really cool, and this is just becoming more and more prevalent. So once again, someone who is doing TV advertising, I think that there's just so much information you can glean from demographics to channels, like literal channels, and just even engagement. How many people are using that QR code to access your content?
I feel like this would be a fun one to report, Like this would be a fun one to make. But actually, I had a question. Royce, you've done a lot of reports. Do you have like a favorite type of report, like area of data that you enjoyed, writing up?
Ooh, good question. So data visualization reports, I would say that my favorite would be session duration on certain pages. So the reason why is because what this does basically is we can give a breakdown to a client or even take a look at our own website of every pertinent web page on our website and see which users are spending the most time on it. And so it's really interesting. Sometimes you'll see that there are pages that you wouldn't think garner the most attention, but all of a sudden people are engaging with it a lot. Engagement rate is high, and then there will be like a 10-minute session duration. And so it's fun to kind of dive into that and say, why are people taking a look at this so much? And I don't want to open a can of worms, but then you can make a few other reporting decisions such as heat mapping to see, just really take a deep dive into that specific page and then just see how users are, interacting with it. Consensually, of course, there's all types of tracking, but yeah, I'd say that's my favorite.
All right, so let's move on to, we've seen some examples. What are some best practices for data visualization? We have a couple listed here: clarity, simplicity, relevant visualizations, consistent design, and accessibility. Can you maybe just real quick run us through these and why we consider them best practices?
Absolutely. So clarity and simplicity. So we've kind of harkened on this, but you just want to make sure it's as simple as possible. You don't want all the bells and whistles. That's just going to distract from your main points and narrative. And that's something that's going to turn people off very quickly. I've seen that happen before. Consistent design, at the same time, you want to make sure that people know that they're reading the same report, whether it's, just page by page or week over week. So as those are coming through, it's really important to make sure that the there's consistency because people, as they begin to learn your reports, they're going to kind of have that muscle memory on where to look for certain things. Also, relevant, visualizations. We just want to make sure that you have the most relevant data sets there that users can manipulate. If you give them too many options to begin to manipulate the report, they're just going to go down a rabbit hole, and all of a sudden it's just going to confuse them. I've seen this happen. This has happened to me before. So really just streamline, edit, edit, edit. And finally, accessibility. You want to make sure that your reports, especially that interactive data visualization, is as accessible to everyone as possible. And that means, making sure that those reports are ADA compliant, that, users can be able to manipulate it if they have, a disability. So just being really cognizant of that. That's crucial.
Are there any others that you might throw in as just like an additional fifth one that maybe you think is potentially important that's not on this list?
It is not on this list, but we're going to get into it, I think, very shortly, and that is going to be just insights and recommendations. And then one other thing here, it's going to be kind of a shameless plug at the same time. But, as we're talking about AI, and this is kind of the point of this webinar as well, is we want to be able to leverage AI. And we want to make life as simple as possible, and just really leverage some of these new tools that are evolving more and more every day. ChatGPT 4, they have a feature where you can now upload files to the prompts. And so I would encourage you here, hey, if there's a lot of data and you're just trying to figure out, how to read some of this a little more streamlined or a little more comprehensively, upload your CSV or your PDF version, prompt it, say, hey, give me some insights, give me recommendations. And I've seen it, spit out some pretty good insights and recommendations. And Janet and I have talked in a previous webinar and did a little deeper dive into this topic. So whenever everyone receives this deck, it is linked here. Feel free to take a look.
If you are watching this after the fact on YouTube or any podcast platform, it will be in the description of this episode. So you can grab that there. So Royce, now we are going to talk about executive summaries and the importance of executive summaries. So why don't you walk us through what an executive summary is and why it's important?
Yes. So executive summaries are really important. And this just kind of comes off the heels of what you asked of the fifth most important part of a data visualization is making sure that you can take what you're seeing and formulate that into a well-packaged executive summary with insights. So I'll tell you the one of the biggest reasons that these are so important is just first impressions. You should be able to answer all of the stakeholders' questions just with very succinctly within a sentence or two in your executive summary. So first impressions, definitely. Decision-making tool. So it is super important. I've already talked about this a little bit throughout this webinar, but it's crucial to include these insights into why you made specific decisions and how that either impacted your campaign positively or how that led to even more optimization efforts. But you should also always include that in your executive summary. Another pro of a executive summary is that it really just saves time. No one really wants to take a look and have to parse through the data and understand it on their own when they're just trying to zip through their day. So it just really saves time, especially for those executive levels who need to understand it quickly, communicate it effectively. So I'd say that's really important. So another reason is it just facilitates understanding. You want to make sure that everyone is on the right page, the same page, and this really helps in doing that effectively. And then increases engagement. Like I said, if someone gets a really robust report, and I'm not saying that the metrics are not important. The metrics and the data are super important. But what I've seen a ton of times, I'm guilty as well, is I see that, I get overwhelmed. I say, I don't have the time for this right now. I just toss it aside. On the other hand, executive summary increases engagement. And Joe, I'm sure that you deal with that all the time as well. You get a report, you want to get the high level points as quickly as possible before diving into the data if needed.
Yep, 100%. Happens all the time.
And then finally here, enhances impact, kind of off the heels there of increases engagement. Engagement then turns to impact. People get excited and they want to share the executive summary. It becomes more shareable, it becomes more comprehensive, and it's just so much easier to communicate.
So now we've talked a little bit about the importance of an executive summary. What makes an impactful executive summary? How do you write, an executive summary that is, beneficial to the client?
Sure. So I'm not going to go through or linger too much on these points because we're going to have a couple of examples. But first and foremost, conciseness. This is like the most obvious one. Make sure that it's concise. You don't want to send an essay of an executive summary. That's going to turn someone off maybe even more than just the data sets. So clarity, you want to make sure that it's structured in a way that is comprehensive, that people can take a look at it, understand the structures, and then therefore understand what they're reading. Highlights the key points. I think that kind of goes hand in hand with the first two. Focuses on the reader's needs. So once again, going back to those KPIs and metrics, you need to answer those questions at the very top. When you map out those KPIs, you want to make sure that those KPIs are alluded to every single time in those executive summaries. And then well structured, also with clarity. You want to make sure that it's broken up in a way that is tailored to your KPIs and just to the success of your campaigns. And then finally, objective and persuasive. You want to set a narrative. However, don't make it too flowery, but at the same time, make sure that you're positioning your executive summary with your own narrative. Because I'll tell you one other thing, a lot of people will begin to make their own narratives once they see numbers. So you need to kind of use data and use, insights, of course, to explain why these numbers are good, why these numbers need improvement, or why these numbers are stellar.
Yeah, I see that all the time with podcasts in terms of, trying to explain podcasts are interesting. And this is a webinar for another day, but podcast data is very interesting in terms of, downloads compared to listens in a podcast episode. And so being able to be objective and persuasive about and be able to, uh, discuss with somebody and talk to them about how maybe something that is lower at one point than others is not actually a bad thing, and the difference there, so that they understand and aren't just immediately discouraged or immediately sometimes really excited. Um, just to make sure that they understand exactly what it's portraying and the reason
And
behind
that's
it.
the whole point too. Get people engaged, get people to understand what they're reading. Even if they're seeing metrics or something that they don't necessarily like, at least they're engaged and you can go from there. It's easiest to work when someone just really understands what they're reading. So one thing I'll show you here, this is just an example prompt. I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but basically one thing you can use generative AI for is, and this is ChatGPT, is taking some of those high level insights that you yourself have gleaned from your reports and just prompt it, hey, help me turn my ad campaign's performance into a well-structured executive summary. These are the wins for me. This is the high level metrics that I've seen. You can even tell it, like, take a look at benchmarks. How does it stack up against the industry? And then, so what this spit out was, and of course, this is the final product. So this was something that I had to parse. We had to go through, make sure it was accurate. But this is just a structured executive summary for a hypothetical campaign that we had prompted. And then one thing you can do is take it a step further and say, turn these into recommendations for future advertising campaigns based on the successes and lessons learned. One thing that, clients love to hear is, okay, this is great, but what can we do better? What can we have done differently? And once again, this is the end product, but this was a starting point for us because we got to kind of take that information and the data and kind of parse it into actual tangible recommendations.
So, Royce, real quick on this, obviously, what our viewers are seeing is the end product, like you said. Working with ChatGPT and OpenAI sources can sometimes still be iffy. Are there any like patterns that you remember seeing that you guys had to just pay attention to make sure that you went back and checked that maybe viewers or listeners could just make sure to keep a close eye on?
Everything. I would say generative AI is a great resource. It is not an means to an end. So I always encourage everyone to never just copy and paste, because that is just that is not a good practice, first of all. And also, there are just so many things that can go wrong, that can be, you know, misconstrued by your prompt, by ChatGPT, and you just really need to go through with a fine tooth comb and make sure that it is accurate. And this goes back to a previous slide where if there's inconsistencies in your reporting, then that just kind of, throws off the
It
validity.
defeats the whole
Yeah,
purpose.
yeah. So just double check everything, especially with generative AI.
Okay, so I think we're going to wrap up here a little bit with a case study example. We have a successful campaign, so we might as well turn it into a case study. Why don't you walk us through a little bit how we did this and how it ended up?
Yeah. So this is like down the line. Say, for example, you have such a fantastic campaign. You're super proud of it. You want to showcase it. The cool thing, once again, this is ChatGPT. This will be, there's a chat feature. So basically, all of your historical chat data will be saved. And so what we can do here is we can go back to that same chat. I don't know how long it's saved for, but we can say, hey, please turn this campaign's key finding, tactics, and results into a comprehensive case study. And then what you'll see here, this is just an end result, but it'll give you a breakdown, and it'll just once again give you the bones and the structure of a good case study. And then, of course, this is not designed by ChatGPT. We had to go through and do this ourselves, put it in a case study form. But yeah, that's just another little tool there.
Yeah, so we designed this in-house, so don't be surprised, when it just spits out, words to you. But yeah, it looks great. I mean, with a little cleanup, it does a pretty good job, I would say, at least. So, Royce, we have gone over a lot of stuff today, a lot of different areas that all, build marketing reports and are all building blocks for a marketing report. What is the most important part of a marketing report that listeners and viewers should take away as the most important piece?
Yeah, if there's one takeaway from this, I would say that executive summary. That is going to be your tool to success. If you master it, if you use, tools, if you do a lot of research, if you really understand, going back to the very first slide, the KPIs and the goals and what your stakeholders and the executives on this campaign want to know, and you can succinctly wrap that up into an executive summary, I think you will have a very, very successful report on your hands.
Any other, now that we are at the end of this, are there any other pieces of information that maybe we didn't cover that you might just, throw out as a, hey, listener, maybe, look into this or remember this? Any last nuggets of wisdom you could throw out there?
There are so many. All I will reiterate, though, is just generative AI. Use it, but check everything you do. And that's the only thing I'd say. Just make sure that you are combing through to make sure that your reporting is as accurate as possible.
Listeners and viewers, thank you so much for attending this webinar. We hope you learned a lot. Reporting, there's a lot to reporting. There's a lot that makes it up, but it's very important that you take the time to make sure that it's clean, to make sure that it's high quality, and to make sure that your clients understand what they're looking at, and making sure that it's easily consumable and that your clients know exactly, how they're doing. Royce, thank you so much again for joining us today. I hope you guys learned a little bit about how you can use AI to help write these reports. Yeah, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe. And thank you, everyone, for joining today.